I encourage everyone to take a moment and breathe and take a tea cheers with a Jiri tea. A Jiri tea recognizes the beauty in shared stories and shared opportunities. Ajiri sources award-winning tea from Kenya, employs women in the region to handcraft the labels, and sends 100% of the profits back to the region to support orphan education. Save 10% on your order of Kenyan teas and coffee with the code BeautifullyHuman at ajiritea.com. AJIRIT.com. Tea mugs up. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. I'm Nick Sheesby. In this podcast, I speak with beautiful humans from all around the world, sharing with you their incredible stories, revealing the power in every human story, to spread love and humanity to a world that is in desperate need of it, to show that we can all connect in beautiful ways, no matter where we come from or what we look like. What you will find out is that we are all beautifully human. Let's all be beautifully human. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. Thank you for tuning in from wherever you are in the world. Today I am hanging out with Brenda Bourns, and man, I have to come clean. The first time we recorded this, I did not actually hit record, so she was gracious enough to come back and have a second conversation with me. So here is the second version of our conversation and her story of what went down in the pandemic for her is, for lack of other words, just wild. She is such a joy. I know you'll feel the joy in her laughter and in her story, and through what she went through, that she is still joyful is quite incredible. I hope you enjoy this conversation. If you enjoy the podcast, follow along on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast. Follow along on Spotify. Rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It helps get these stories to more people. And as always, enjoy this beautiful conversation. So, round two, I love to start these off with a very broad and overarching question and say, tell me the story of your life.
Okay, well, story of my life. I am the child of two immigrants. My mother came to Canada in the late 60s, one of the first waves of Filipino nurses to come to Canada. And my father is an immigrant from Britain. And so he came from London as a child during the war. So when they met, it was a clash of cultures for sure. And he ended up teaching my mom a lot of things, specifically how to drive, how to find your way around the city, how to deal with the snow, because she'd never seen it before.
Right.
So yeah, it was a really interesting childhood, being brought up by two people of different religions and different cultures. And so it was interesting for sure. It was a very different upbringing than my friends.
Yeah. What were the religions that they practiced?
My mother is Roman Catholic and my father is Protestant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How was the mesh of that? What did that look like?
You know, my dad converted to be able to marry my mother, but I can't say that he was a practicing Catholic.
Sure.
But whenever we had, whether it was a baptism or a christening or something was happening with someone in the family, he was there singing the loudest, and he would come to church on very specific celebrations. But we just were brought up with respecting other people's beliefs and their religions and their cultures, and just kind of having an overall respect and curiosity about how people believe and celebrate and their traditions and their cultures. And yeah, so it was kind of neat that way.
That's so cool. Yeah, as you were talking and saying he went to certain dates, and I was like, I mean, that kind of just sounds like a lot of people of like, yeah, I'll be there on the important days, the highlights, so I get seen and do all that. Um, yeah, I'm. What year was it when they came to Canada?
So my dad would have come as a child. He was born in 34. So he would have been here around 39 to 40.
Okay.
And my mother came in 1967.
Okay. So when they got married, was there any issue just even on like the racial cultural end of
Oh,
it?
yeah, I'm sure not a lot of it was spoken out loud or to their faces,
Sure.
but my mother definitely felt in certain circumstances that, you're an outsider. But my mother I was brought up by a strong female. I was brought up, she was a head nurse of geriatrics at the hospital, but
Wow.
she was pretty hardcore. But also super kind, right? But you don't mess with Texas. She
Right.
was all of 5'2", but um, she was very driven, and she encouraged my dad to start investing in real estate when they were younger. And so this was a part-time job that they had alongside their full-time job. So my dad was a full-time salesman, and my mother was the head nurse of geriatrics. And on the side, I grew up incredibly bitter. I'm not going to deny that my brother and I were constantly painting fences, caulking windows, learning how to fix toilets at all these rental properties. And we really had no clue. Like, we were really quite clueless. I was just jealous that all my friends were biking down the monkey trails and skateboarding and,
Sure.
hanging out at the mall and going to the movies. And I was at the family business painting fences. And it wasn't until I was in grade 11 that my parents bought a lakefront property and we built a cottage on the lake. And that was the big aha moment for my brother and I. It's like, oh, okay. So if you work hard, you can get cool things, or you can,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was a little bit of a lesson on entrepreneurship along the way without even realizing it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I can fully get behind that. Of I would have been pissed too. I would have been like, "What the hell, man? All my friends are doing cool shit, and I'm painting. This sucks."
Totally how it was. Totally.
Totally.
And my brother and I used to make jokes. It's like, oh, they're going to get divorced again today because they're hanging wallpaper. Like, so there was a lot of fun times, but then there was a lot of stress. And then you would work hard and then you would play hard. And yeah, it was definitely, I learned a lot about respect because I would see sometimes renters wouldn't be respectful to my family.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't process. I remember, I'll tell you a quick story. I was 16 and the phone rang and this renter had been locked out of his apartment. And I said, you know what? I'm 5 minutes away. My parents happened not to be home. I said, I'm 5 minutes away. I'll come with the key and I'll let you in right away. So I show up and this guy has kicked in the door because his ice cream was melting. I was 16 years old. I lost it on this guy. I'm like, that's coming out of your damage deposit. My dad's going to be super mad when he gets home.
Yeah.
The running joke when my parents would go away on vacation is that they're like, let's not leave Brenda in charge because she'll kick out all the tenants. We'll come home.
Yeah. Oh my god.
People don't show respect, or if it says no smoking, no animals, and the next thing you know, there's the Dalmatian that's had 7 puppies, and
Oh
like,
god.
I've seen it all. I've
Yeah.
seen it all, and you learn a lot.
Yeah, it made me think. I I lived in Virginia for a little while, and my girlfriend at the time, her dad was what I like to call a slumlord, but he just fixed up these old houses, and he would rent them for like a month, and then they would just get completely thrashed, and then we'd go in and paint them and sand the floor. So I've seen a lot of craziness. Like, I'll tell you a quick one. The wildest one I ever saw is this house got put up for auction because this man couldn't pay for it. And so we bought it. It was like $2,000, insanely cheap for a 4 or 5 bedroom house. And we're like, what is wrong with this place, right? So we walk into this place, and this man was so addicted to pornography that he, and there had to be something else going on. I didn't know, but like when we went into the basement, there was just like stacks, like almost as tall as me high of old porn mags. But in the house, he had literally torn up all the floorboards to just leave a walking path through the house because he couldn't afford to pay for his heat. So he was burning the floorboards, and there was just like a walking path through the house, like up the stairs. Like he had ripped up everything and just enough so he could walk through. And that's why they sold it so cheap, because it was like the biggest renovation we ever had to do, because we had to put in basically a whole new flooring system.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting how some people will treat your property with respect and others just won't care. Like I won't, I know of so many times that tenants would run off in the middle of the night. They would pack in the middle of the night, take off, and not have to pay the rent that's due. And or it's just, yeah, people are funny. People are funny, but I learn a lot about compassion. And my mother had this vision that she wanted to help other immigrants that had just come to Canada. And so we would take these homes and, like you say, fix them up. And every Christmas, my brother and I would deliver turkeys and a box of chocolates to every tenant.
Oh, cool.
So it was the thing. We would all load these turkeys and these boxes of chocolates into the car, and we would drive around to all of the suites, and my brother and I would go and deliver them. And it just a little gift of thank you, but it goes a long way. If you as the landlord are respectful, you will be treated with respect most often than not.
Yeah. I think that's so neat too. What a cool part to instill in you of just being able to give back and give to those people. And not everyone has a lot during those times too. It can be a really stressful time, not a lot of joy for a lot of people, but it can be super stressful. So I think that's really neat that you got to go play Santa Claus a little bit and take some food and some treats to people.
Some untaught lessons, right?
Yeah.
Things just learned by observing or by how my parents treated and interacted with everybody. Is we learned a lot along the way through osmosis, really.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think about it when I have like tickets for the floor part of an arena show, and I go up and I find the biggest fan or the youngest kid that's got a sign up at the top of an arena, and I bring them down to the floor, and I get to play a little Santa Claus for them. And it's just those little giving back moments when you have something to give back that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it really is special. Growing up in an interracial family in 1975 I moved into my new neighborhood, and it was very vanilla. And I it out, and I was bullied and I was picked on because I was different. And as a kid in grade 3, I didn't understand the slang. I didn't understand these names that I was being called. And I would come home and I would ask my mom, like, what's a chink? And of course, my mother doesn't understand the slang. She goes, I don't know that word.
Sure, yeah.
Like, well, it's not good, Mom. It's not good. She's like, well, what do these kids say? I said, well, I think they're making fun of you. They're doing this. And like, so, it was teaching my mom, and she in turn taught me how to deal with people that aren't kind. And I remember one time she had bought me this beautiful pink dress, and it was one of those ones that were swirly and little girls would twirl around. And I just thought it was the greatest twirling dress. And I wore it to school, and these 2 brothers literally chased me home, throwing rocks, pulling hair, calling me pink pig, all these things. And I got home, I'm like, Mom, I love this dress, but I'm never wearing it again.
Wow.
And she's like, oh no, you're wearing it tomorrow. I'm like, are you trying to get me killed? Like,
Jesus.
You know what's going on? And she goes, oh no, you're wearing it tomorrow. And when these boys start chasing you, you tell them clearly, your words don't matter. I don't care what you say. And you turn on your heel and you go to the teacher. And she says, you be with a friend. And basically, I was in grade 3 and my mother was teaching me how to give someone the, you know, how to tell them off exactly without saying that, but just instilling in, you can't bully me.
Yeah.
Amazing things happen when you stand up for yourself and then you go and tell the teacher and stand with the teacher. The kids learn a lesson and they stop bullying you.
Yeah.
And so little funny ways that my mom would teach me things that I didn't understand or realize at the time, but I'm super appreciative now because it's given me some thick skin.
Yeah, no kidding. And it just bums me out when I hear stories like that, no matter where they happen. And I think people think they're just regional to wherever they are. And it's like, you're up in Winnipeg and, you know, people think of Canadians as a broad generalization as nice. And it's like, you don't get away from it anywhere, wherever you are. And yeah, what a powerful message that your mom told to you of just like, you're wearing it tomorrow and you're going to stand up to these kids and you're going to tell them off and you're going to say, fuck off, get out of my face.
Basically. Yep. And she had so many lessons when I was growing up, and I came home and I was really upset one day because the kids were teasing me that my mother had brown skin. And she said, let me tell you a story. When God was making people, he rolled out the dough. He made all the people cutter and, they came out, they were undercooked. They were white. So he put them aside, rolled it out again, cooked his cookies. They were dark. He set them aside, did it again, put them in the oven, took them out. They were brown. They were perfect. But God loves all his cookies. So he put them all in the bowl and they all get along. You remember that. Brown is perfect. I'm like, okay, Mom.
Brown is perfect. That's amazing. I love that.
In her little way of sharing stories, she just always made me feel that I was good enough and that I was fine. And I did notice that my brother is 7 years younger than I am, and I coached his track team when he was in elementary. And it was amazing in the 7 years, the difference in our neighborhood of it wasn't just vanilla anymore. There was every different culture. And on his team, he had 2 Filipinos, a Vietnamese, a black boy, and the spare was the little white caboose, we called him. It was amazing that my brother in the same neighborhood did not have the experience that I had in elementary. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's amazing that in such a short span of time. I mean, 7 years is a good amount of time, but that's a short span of time in like in life, and how quickly it changed, and that he wasn't having the same stuff to deal with that you were. That's
Absolutely.
so cool. And I love that in a realistic way, like you and your mom were creating that culture. You were standing up so for the next people coming through, when all the other races came in, it was like, oh, we've been through this, like, let's move past it. They're not gonna take your shit, so get used to it. Let's just do it. That's life, and let's move forward because we're all beautiful cookies.
Well, we're all the same. We all have red blood.
Right.
You know, my dad was the kindest, most easygoing person. He would make a friend like that, and he was so friendly. And my mother was a little bit more reserved, but get her around her Filipino nurses and she's hilarious. But it was just interesting watching how people treated my mom differently, and then also treated her differently when they saw that she had a white husband.
Sure.
So it was super interesting. And I remember my mother being the head nurse. We lived in a neighborhood called St. Boniface, and they started transitioning for the nurses to learn French. My brother and I thought this was the most hilarious thing, our Filipino mother learning French. And so she would come home, and they were being taught by the nuns at the St. Boniface College. And she came home one day, and We're like, Mom, how's your homework going? Those nuns, don't they understand my Filipino English? They say, Virginia, you're combing your horse, not your hair. And she's like, Shava, Shava, same thing to me, Filipino English. We used to laugh and laugh and laugh. But it was just, there's just so many stories of seeing her maneuver in her reality and us adapting to that and understanding. But I had the best childhood growing up. Honestly, every dinner was like amazing because she would make a separate meal for my dad, whether that would be roast beef and onions and potatoes. And then for herself, she would make the stir fry and the rice and the fish or whatever. And so my brother and I would be like, oh, we're going to have a little stir fry. We're gonna
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was pretty awesome. But so I do feel that I grew up in a family that just respected all nations, all colors, creeds, religions, and kind of how we were brought up.
I love that. How in Winnipeg now, you grew up in Winnipeg, right?
Yes.
So how is it now, all these years later, with the diversity and everything up there?
It is such a mosaic. And so I come from a marketing background. So many new products are launched in Winnipeg because they say, fly in Winnipeg, it'll fly anywhere across Canada, because we have every single religion, from Italians to Ukrainians to Filipinos to French, Russian, everything. So we are truly a melting pot here. And there's a joke in Winnipeg that we are retail, wholesale, and garage sale, and not necessarily in that order. We're
Amazing.
very we like a good deal and we like high quality. So we will suss it out. If it's not really good quality at a good price point, Winnipeggers won't buy it, and then it won't fly anywhere else across Canada.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
We do a wonderful festival that's held here every year called Folklorama, and we have busloads of tourists from all across the states that come up to Winnipeg, and it's a celebration of all the different cultures in our community. So you have the Afro-Caribbean, then you've got the Portuguese, the Philippine, and each pavilion sells tickets, and you can take your world passport and you go around the world and you show up and you get the drink from that culture, you get food from prepared, fresh, and then you get to see all the dancing and the clothing, and the ambassadors come out and share a little bit about that part of the world. And so it's a wild night. There's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of imbibing, but friendships are made, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of entertainers and musicians and singers and dancers, and it's a really fun 10 days.
Yeah, I love that. I think any celebration of culture. Also, what's really neat about that to me is, like, I know I've been very fortunate to travel, and I've met a ton of beautiful people because of my ability to travel and see other places in the world. And I understand that I'm very fortunate for that. So it's really cool that, and I feel many more places should do it, is have that, like, bring the culture to you, to your place, so that even if you don't know about the culture and you're scared or you're nervous, you just walk out and go to this festival, and then you get to see the culture, you get to have the food. And so if you can't travel, you get to travel, quote unquote,
100%
during this festival and see some dancing and some music. And I mean, how cool to see that. Like, I can't imagine, and I'm sure it can happen, but I can't imagine someone going to that festival and seeing someone from a different culture and then seeing the joy and the dancing and the food and all of that, and then being like, I hate them.
100%. And so, I used to work for our local football team, and we would have many athletes from the States and some from the deep states. And they come up to Winnipeg and they are treated like gold. Everybody knows who they are, and they're like, oh, it's not like that where I'm from.
Right.
I'm coming from Mississippi, or I'm coming from wherever. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not treated like that there. And so they found it refreshing, actually, to come to Winnipeg and to be, treated fairly and to be welcomed.
Yeah. I love that so much. I was thinking about that after you told me about it, and I was like, man, what a cool festival. I just wish that was, and I know it does happen other places, but I feel like little places in the States need to adapt that kind of like, or someone should make it a tour and just have it travel to places that don't have much culture and just root down at the fairgrounds or something and be like, come on out, people, learn about it, like in the deep south here. I mean, it'd be
So
beautiful.
it's so fantastic. So one night you could be at the Caribbean Pavilion and you're watching the guy with the fire and the limbo dancing, and then the
Yeah.
next you're watching the Irish dancers doing the river dance, right? Like it's just all over the map.
Yes.
It is pretty cool. And
That's so awesome.
we do have a lot of talent in our city, and so it's pretty heartwarming, and everybody knows somebody who performs at Folklorama. So,
Right.
yeah, it's really truly a really, it's us showing off our community and the
Yeah.
beautiful that live here. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Well, and you're in events, and I work on with music, so that's where I thought of like, ooh, we could put that together and go on tour with that, and just take a multicultural tour of love all around. And I think it would
So
be amazing.
should work on that.
I was gonna say, now that I'm thinking about it, that would be, I would love that. That would be like ultimate joy for me of like touring and making people or giving people the gift of culture and travel that they don't necessarily take on their own. I think that'd be a really cool idea.
Well, and people have more of an appreciation of a culture when they're completely immersed in it. When
Yeah.
you get to eat the food, hear the music, listen to the language, see the clothing, um, there really is that connection, that emotional connection, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, when you get to travel and just go spend a week or something in another country where you don't know the language or you just feel a little uncomfortable at first, it's just then you find those people that make you feel comfortable and you get their food and you get to, oh, it's, yeah, it's amazing. So I like that. I think it's a good transition into your jobs with event planning and everything. Talk to me about that.
You know, I've been very fortunate. So I always thought that I was going to have a whistle around my neck, teaching kids phys ed and having summers off. So that's the plan. So back in grade 3, when I was being bullied, we used to have this competition, the Canada Fitness Awards. And depending on how you did, you got a bronze badge, or it was a patch that you could sew on your Puma jacket.
Yeah.
Bronze, silver, gold, or the award of excellence, which meant that you got 90 to 100 percentile in all of the testing. And I'm only 4'11" now. So in grade 3, I was pretty small.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I was a little athlete, but I was doing really well in all of the things except the very last one was the standing long jump. We had 3 races, and I remember jumping and being short and jumping and being short. And then I jumped my last one. I was a little short, but my phys ed teacher whipped up that tape and he said, "She did it. Brenda did it. She got the first award of excellence." And that was a big aha moment for me because I was no longer the last one picked on a team. I was now instantly had friends. And at a really young age, I realized if you're good in sports, you're popular or you are respected. And so I busted my butt in sports and came home and said to my mom, I'm going to be a phys ed teacher. And she needed a defibrillator because if you tell a Filipino nurse mother that you're going to be a phys ed teacher, she doesn't even comprehend. She's like,
sure.
What? That doesn't sound like doctor or nurse to me. So I did. I worked my butt off to have the grades to get direct entry into the university. And I got my phys ed degree, which is now called a kinesiology degree. And I was really excited. But in my final year of my program, I got a Gatorade job as the Gatorade rep for Manitoba. And it kind of put me on a different path of sports marketing. I'm still the Gatorade rep in my province 32 years later.
Wow.
And it's been a fantastic wild ride. But through that, I got headhunted to go work at our local football team. And the work that I got to do for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers was incredible. It was so much fun, but it was so intense at the same time. And so I've had the opportunity to work on some of Canada's largest events. So our version of your Super Bowl is the Grey Cup game.
Yeah.
And I've got a chance to that. Our version of your Grammys is the Junos. I've got a chance to produce that. I've done FIFA World Cup International Soccer, Pan American Games, World Junior Hockey, Briars, concerts, fashion shows, you name it. And so it has been a wild career. But as an event planner or producer, you have to have this level of calm, right? Because when all the stuff is going wild behind the scenes and, you know, your hair's on fire and you're on a unicycle juggling backwards, blindfolded, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You just have to stay super calm. And sometimes you can plan till the cows come home, but it's not going to matter.
Right.
It's not going to matter. So you always have a bunch of contingency plans, but truly, you can plan till the cows come home, and that generator is going to get delivered to the old Winnipeg Arena that doesn't exist anymore because now it's a Target parking lot. But someone's going to have old paperwork, and that generator that you need is going to go in the wrong area. Like, it just happens.
Yeah.
So I think staying calm under pressure has been one of the greatest skill set that I have taken away from a career that is all about coordinating chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say controlled chaos, and the best analogy I ever got when I was younger was a friend of mine told me that I should work like a duck, and I just had no idea. And that's not typically what you would hear of, like, this powerhouse worker of a duck, right? You just don't hear of that. And so when I asked her, I said, "What does that mean? Why would I work like a duck?" And she said, on the top of the pond or the water, they're just cruising along nice and steady, but underneath they're just like freaking out. And so I was like, that is, yeah, now you're thinking, like, anyone listening, you're thinking about a duck across the water, and yeah, like, they just cruise along, and then when the water comes on to them, they just shake it off, and then they just keep cruising. So I've always thought of that, and it's funny when I'm in those moments where it's just complete chaos, and I'm just like, okay, I actually think about it, and it makes me chill out, and it just like, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be a duck. I'm just going to cruise along.
I love it. My friends laugh because they know I've got my game day face, which is this. Hi. You got the headset on. But the producer is smiling. Everything's going great behind the scenes, and nobody knows that it's a complete shit show. But if everybody's smiling, then right? Because perception is reality. If the event producer is running around like a crazy person, now everyone's alerted, all the guests know, or the fans know that, oh, something's going on. But if you're just smiling and calm, nobody needs to know. Right. Just fix behind the scenes. Yeah. And I think I may have shared with you the one story, like one of the toughest events that I ever had to produce was the Junos in Winnipeg. And we were planning in a new building that was still being built. So it would be like, oh, we need a stove plug here. We need Jenny power over here. We need 14 amp volts over here. And it was crazy. And then come event day, Neil Young, who's, you know, Winnipeg's son, had a brain aneurysm. Ooh. And he was the closer. So he had always said, I won't perform at the Junos unless it's in my hometown. And then that day he's ill. And so it was that total scramble, and Katie Lang came and sang Hallelujah in her bare feet. It was just amazing. She did an amazing job. But also the morning of the Junos, we found out that the Pope passed away. And It was just, there's probably no other figure on earth who would command as much attention as the Pope, right? Every Pope, whether you are Catholic or not, this is a major thing. and the planning of his funeral. So we didn't know, are we going to be preempted? What's going to happen? And so there was just a lot of chaos. So you can plan till you're blue in the face, but you can't plan for the Pope dying the morning of your event and your closer in the hospital with a brain aneurysm.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's though, like you said, you can have every last detail fine-tuned and perfect, and it is great. And Neil Young's rider is set, and there's an X where he needs it. His whatever's here and there and everything, and then things that you would never imagine happen. The Pope dying, and then he has a brain aneurysm. It's like when things get weird on tour or with an event, it's like it's not just a small thing that happens that derails it, but it doesn't really derail it. It's just like, oh, these incredibly massive things just happened, and now we mess with it. We get it working.
There's that trickle effect from the one thing goes
Yeah.
this, you know.
Yeah.
It's so I do believe that there's not a lot that can faze me now.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have a hell of a story about not being phased. So I think that's a perfect transition right into that story.
Well, so 10 months ago, my family and I moved into a new house, and our Winnipeg Jets had just been in a playoff game, and it was just before midnight. And I thought, I'm going to take the dog for a quick walk just so she can do her business. And sure enough, if as luck would have it, 10 feet away from our yard, a rabbit or a squirrel, and I'll never know because I never saw it, but it scurried past us, and my dog reacted, and I ended up falling to my knees, and I hit my face on the ground, and I got up, and I was like, did I just break a jaw? Did I lose some chiclets? Like, my teeth there? Like, I really whacked my face, and I wasn't unconscious, but I was really startled and really in a lot of pain. And then she lunged forward. And unfortunately for me, I was about half a foot to a foot away from the base of my neighbor's tree. And I impacted it with such force that I got rocked backwards, and I could just feel my head. Honestly, it felt like an accordion. It was throbbing so hard. I've never felt pain like that in my life. More so than childbirth. I didn't think I'd ever.
Wow.
I
will never experience that, but I can't even fathom that. Wow.
Yeah. And I had a crazy childbirth, but this was the most pain that I've ever felt in my life. And I kind of knocked myself senseless. But when I came to, because my dog came right back to me, I was having cognitive thoughts with myself. Brenda, you're in trouble. Like, you're in trouble. And without being graphic or trigger warnings for anybody, but it was actually the blood that I could feel, the warmth of the blood that kind of snapped me out of it. And then I could taste the blood in my mouth, like the saltiness. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm really in trouble. And, I'm on the ground and I'm looking around. Not one skateboarder, not one biker, not one person walking, not one car. And I can see my neighbor's lights on across the street. They're watching the post-game show.
Right.
So, but they're so close, yet they're so far, like, because I couldn't move.
Right.
I thank goodness every day that my dog isn't a little chihuahua, but she's about 55. And all I could think, my wherewithal, is that I need to get home. And so I put my hand on her collar and kind of tucked her underneath my shoulder and kind of tried to slide along with my legs as best as I could. And I just said, take me home, go see daddy. Let's go home. Let's go home. Go see Randy. And she figured it out. She knew. And she dragged me across my neighbor's lawn, across our lawn, up the stairs, and then barked until my husband woke up. And, so did she cause the accident? Yes.
Yeah.
Did she save my life? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by the time my husband got to the door, he opens the door and I look like I've been attacked by a pickaxe. Like I'm covered in blood. The dog's covered in blood. The stairs are covered in blood. And he is like, what the hell is going? He actually didn't say hell. What the is going on? He lost it. And all I could say is I could talk a little bit, but all I could say is just get me some ice, right? And I knew that I couldn't see out of this eye. But I've played enough sports. I played rugby, I played hockey, I played women's tackle football. I don't play little shishi sports. I play hardcore sports. Yeah. And I just thought, I had a little bit of blood behind my eye, right? There is a survival instinct, but there's also a mother's instinct. And I knew that my daughter was going to be home that night within the hour. She was at a socially distanced bonfire. And there was no way that she was coming home and finding me on my neighbor's lawn with a dog attached to my wrist on a leash. That wasn't happening. So everything that I had at that moment was get home, get help.
Yeah.
And in hindsight being almost 2020, at the time, because I couldn't really talk and verbalize very much, I took a picture of myself and texted it to my daughter and said, come home, accident. My poor kid is sitting at this bonfire, gets this message, loses it. She's probably about 25 minutes away. I think her and her friend got here in 13.
Yeah.
But by this time, we've already gone to the hospital. I just didn't want her coming home, mom and dad not home, and the house covered in blood. That's not right.
Yeah, no.
So what happened next was a trip to the local hospital, which was 4 minutes away. And I happened to know that this was the eyeball hospital because I had surgery on this eye 4 years prior. So I knew, let's go. There was never one conceptual thought about calling the ambulance.
Right.
It's just faster for us to go. So we get there and I needed a CAT scan, and the CAT scan operator had already gone home because it was the August long weekend in Canada. They went home at 11:30. I showed up at 12:05. And so they said, you need to get a CAT scan. And off we go to another hospital, get the CAT scan. My husband can't come in with me because it's COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm now at this hospital. He wakes up at 6 a.m. because he went home. He woke up at 6 a.m. and called them and said, I'm just checking in on my wife. And they're like, oh, she's not here anymore. She's been taken.
At least they went straight into it. They didn't just say, she's not here anymore and hang up.
So he meets me at the other hospital within 5 minutes because literally we live 3 minutes away. And now we're waiting to meet with the surgeon. And I knew going in that they were going to do their best to save my eye, but I didn't know how bad it was. And they called my husband 30 minutes into the surgery and they said, we're sorry, we need your consent to remove her eye. And he was beyond devastated.
Yeah.
Like, because I think he was still in shock. He was beyond devastated. And he said, well, what are the choices? And I said, well, normally what we do is we would look at the eye, when we make sure everything's in the right order, and we would sew it up and let it heal for 6 weeks and then open it up and see what we can do to restore vision. And they're like, but we're 99% sure we can't save her eye. And he's like, I don't want my wife coming home and thinking about that for 6 weeks, that I've got to go get my eyeball removed.
Right.
He's like, he's out, just take it out and we'll deal with it, which was the best decision.
Yeah.
And so after the surgery, because I'm a diabetic, I went into shock. I went into diabetes ketoacidosis and my sugars were over 34. So super high. And so now I'm rushed by ambulance back to another hospital where they're going to take down my sugars. And the surgeon had said to our family, you'll have to come back for a follow-up in a week, but you'll probably be coming from the other hospital. So my family and I have got it in our minds that I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to be there for a week.
Yeah.
Well, that night at 10:30 at night, they call my husband and they're like, we've got her sugars in order. You can come pick her up. She's discharged. My husband's losing his mind again. He's like, first of all, I don't know how to deal with someone who's lost an eye. I certainly don't know how to deal with diabetes ketoacidosis. And they're like, yeah, ready for pickup.
She's yours.
Yep. And I said, get my daughter on the phone. And I said, honey, just come pick me up. I don't want to be an emergency. Like, come pick me up. And so I was back in my bed within the 24 hours. So it was like 23 hours and I was back home.
Good Lord.
It was crazy. I guess the next part of the story is my daughter overheard my husband and I talking about insurance. And we have all the insurances in place. We have life insurance, critical illness, dental, vision, dog insurance. I've got car insurance. We have all the insurances. But what we found out the hard way is the insurance that we have covers you for full blindness. It doesn't cover you for the loss of one eye.
Oh.
So our daughter, she was 18 at the time, and she had overheard this story, or she overheard our conversation. She took it upon herself. You know, Facebook is not cool for 18-year-olds. That's old people social media, right? Well, she went on social media and she set up a GoFundMe page. And I didn't find out about it until a day later, and it had almost hit the goal. And she had sent this out to a whole bunch of people. And that's how a lot of my friends and colleagues and my network found out that I had injured myself. And so when I found out about it, I looked at her and she just started bawling. She goes, I don't want you to be mad, but you always taught me that you need a contingency plan. And my mom getting an eyeball. And so she had gone online and found prosthetic eyes, found an American website, did the Canadian conversion at 1.3 and put it up on a GoFundMe. So after that, I came back onto social media to thank my community because they did pay for my prosthetic eye. And so I came back on to thank them for their kindness and their support. And then I took them on my journey of relearning depth perception, relearning peripheral vision, trying things that are so outside the box for me. Like, I'm such a tomboy. I don't cook. I can't cook to save my life. And there I was practicing my fine motor skills to keep this eye sharp. And I was measuring and cooking and baking. And I've never worn makeup in 40 years. Now I'm putting on makeup every day and I'm practicing these things. I was doing my nail polish every day. I was just finding projects to work on while I healed. And then I did get fitted for my prosthetic eye, and the ocularists that were there, I think they thought I was crazy because I was taking pictures of everything and taking videos. And I honestly thought, well, no, let's be honest. I'd never thought about it. But when I do think about it, with this day and age of computer technology and 3D stuff, I thought the prosthetic eyes were done more with computer.
Sure.
I didn't realize it was someone looking at your eye and literally hand painting the flecks and the depth and the color and matching it perfectly to your eye. And so when I was sitting there, they pour it's like a silicone mold of rubber into your eye socket. You're sitting
Yikes.
there, and then you have to wait, whatever it is, 5 minutes for this socket to be formed. And then they pull it out and off they go and make the prosthetic. They send you for lunch and you come back and the eyeball is done. It's the craziest thing. I have an eyeball in 4 hours. And when I was watching this gentleman, literally they take the iris of the prosthetic and it's like they put it on the top of a nail head. And they hold it up to you, and they come in and they put in the colors and the flecks. And so I'm watching him do this, and he's quite the artist. And I'm like, so do you take any requests? He's like, what have you got in mind? I'm like, well, when I played sports, my nickname was Killer B. My nickname since I've been in grade 3 has been B because my initials are BB and it was shortened to B. I said, I don't know. I don't have a tattoo on my body, but I think it would be incredibly cool that if I have to lose my kick-ass patch, that I've got a bumblebee on my eyeball. So sure enough, I go for lunch. I come back and the ocularist is like, I have your eye in my hand. Yes. And of course, he put a bee on my eyeball, which I absolutely love. It's a great, not that party trick, but it's a great conversation starter for sure.
It's a good party trick.
Yeah. And I just think it's the coolest thing. And so I do wear my patch because my eye is still, or my face is still healing. And sometimes it gets really weepy, and it's not a clear weep like a tear. It's sometimes like when you have the flu, and it's really, when I'm in front of a computer on a Zoom, sometimes it gets really tired and it'll start to weep, and it's not pretty. But I do have a pretty cool prosthetic that I'll share with you.
Yes.
It's a little bit smaller. My eye sits a little bit smaller than my other one. I do have a little facial scar here. There's a little lip and a couple of little stitches up into the eyebrow. But I have a lot
Yeah.
of people say if I didn't know, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, same. As I look at you, and I wouldn't have known. Like, had you just been speaking to me this whole time, even if your eye was weeping, I wouldn't have known, because it is really, really unbelievable, the detail that is in there. And the bee
Really.
is super cool. You sent me a photo of it. It's unbelievable. Like, unbelievable. Wow, that was really, really lame, but I did it. I went for it. Yeah, wow. Just
Yeah.
everything in that story is just unbelievable. Also, the fact that these people that make your eyeballs are, what artistry. That's unbelievable how cool that is.
And I said to him, I said, "Are you an artist by trade before you went in to specialize as an ocularist?" He goes, "No, I have an economics degree. This is self-taught." Like,
Wow.
what?
You missed your
That's
calling, friend.
actually incredible. And so when they put the mold in to create this socket, a lot of people think that a glass eye is completely round like a marble,
Mm.
but it's not. It's called a scleral shell now, and it's kind of like the shape of a football, but concave like a contact lens.
Okay.
And so what the surgeon does the day of the enucleation, they form a ball of muscle, and he puts little prongs on the edge of this ball of muscle so that when the prosthetic sits on top of it, it will track like a normal eye. So my bumblebee tends to want to sit in the corner, but it was meant, my eyes upside down, it was meant to go in this corner so that no one would see it unless I did this. It hasn't done that yet. It's constant. So I tell everyone, because my bee is always swimming around, I'm like, it's just busy.
Yeah.
But it does seem to like to sit in the corner. And so when I'm talking to someone, if I don't have my patch on, they can see a little something in my corner, and they're like, "Oh, you have something in your eye." I'm like, "Oh yes, it's
I
my
do.
little bumblebee."
Yeah. Yes. I love that. And man,
Take it out easy and put it back in easy. And it's, yeah, people are very curious.
yeah.
They want it. They want to say, what does it look like? How does it feel? Does it hurt you? And yeah, people are just curious.
Of course, yeah. Man, that, what a story. I mean, and the fact that you're laughing and joyful and just getting through it is really remarkable, because I mean, there's a lot of people that would have dealt with that in a completely different way and just been pissed off and annoyed, and any descriptor you want to put in there. It's really amazing that you've taken it with such stride, and you've learned how to do all these things with one eye. And it's like, I know that's in you to just say, okay, this is what we got, but like, it's really remarkable that was your mindset, and you're still laughing and having a good time with it.
Well, I honestly do believe, going back to that career skill set, is that it brought me to a place of calmness. Like I never had the woe is me. I never cried over the loss of my eye. I've never had a pity party. And I'm not saying that I'm just some big brave I just don't think it's in my personality. Like I was like, and maybe it's coming from that athletic mindset too. It's like, okay, what's next? At the
Right.
end of the day, stubborn people are stubborn like they get things done, but they're
Yeah.
just so stubborn. And so if I can't do something, I'm going to keep practicing. I can't tell you how many times I was trying to pour my wine into a glass and I spilled, or how many times I've puts, a mug on the counter and it smashes on the ground because I missed it, or I trip on a step. I just keep practicing. And my girlfriend had introduced me to a one-eyed support group on Facebook, but who knew there was such a thing?
Of course.
And I had a really hard time going to it for 3 months because I would go and there were people on different stages of their journey. And some people are not doing well. And, talking suicidal thoughts or crumpled in the corner, or some people don't leave their house for 2 years. They were in the basement for 2 years. Wow. And I'm like, what? Like, I never did that cross my mind.
Right.
And it also made me incredibly grateful to be a Canadian. And yes, my prosthetic eye was not covered, but everything else was: the ambulance rides, the doctor, the enucleation, the surgery, the diabetes, the medicine, all that's covered because we have free Medicare, right? Yeah. When I see people from other countries sharing their prosthetic eyes that don't look don't even look like an eye. It looks like it looks like they're a cyborg, or it hurts my heart because you can see people that have sensitivities to being stared at, being judged. I love my patch.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty badass. I think every kid as a kid wished that they were a pirate.
Totally.
But there are some people that if you were to go Arbinar or something like that, they would lose it.
Right.
They want to throat punch somebody. Whereas I'd be like, "What you got? Like what?" Like,
yeah, come on.
That I dressed up as a badass pirate for Halloween. I did.
Of course, you had to. You were picked.
I just take things in stride. And although industry has shuttered, because we're not quite like the States right now, we're not having the really large numbers of in-person events. Our city is still in code red. I have enjoyed meeting people like yourself and being on interviews for podcasts, radio shows, or just sharing my story. And I did have people reach out to me and say, "Brenda, whatever you shared on Facebook today, I found really inspiring," or "I was having a really tough day and I just love the story of your dog," or whatever it is. I think we were in the middle of a pandemic and people were looking for hope.
Yeah.
And I know that I look to some people online for inspiration, and never would I have ever thought that I would be that person for someone. But if my friends or strangers find something in my story that's inspiring, that's awesome. But I mean, you don't wake up in the morning going, "I'm going to inspire Facebook today." You're just trying to get day by day.
Of course. Yeah.
You're trying to get day by day. But I just do believe that skills of staying calm under pressure and being stubborn as, that's what's brought me to where I am today. And I literally would go jogging with my dog. Like literally, I think it was 20 days after my accident, I was back out doing 5K with the dog and practicing running on leaves and on the boulevard so I could kind of figure that out. And I've only wiped out once and done another face plant once.
That's not bad.
It's a work in progress, right? And very grateful to be on this side of the grass. And life is just too short, so you may as well just embrace it in all of its roller coaster ways, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, I don't think you were envisioning getting smashed into a tree that day and then going to inspire a lot of people with your story, but it is beautiful that you've taken it with that grain of salt as what it is, and just been out here telling your story and meeting people. And it's a really amazing story. I mean, just one of those stories that's like, holy shit, how did that happen? But then it did. And now you are on this side sharing your recovery story, and just, it's really beautiful.
I really watch how I share the story with certain people, like children, especially, because they have no filter. They're very right. And sometimes I'll be like, I was at 7-Eleven picking up something one day and I saw this little girl and she went and hid behind her dad. And then I could hear her going, Daddy, why does she have a patch? And he's like, oh, maybe she's injured herself, or, And so when I talk to children, I don't go into the details. I'm not telling a child that I walked the family dog and lost my eyeball. Like, that's not out of my mouth. But I do share, oh, I have a boo-boo. And I just thought that a patch is way cooler than a Band-Aid. And I'm like, don't you think? And they're like, yeah. So
yes,
it's just
I do.
conditioning it so that it doesn't scare them.
Right.
And people are just like, people stare all the time. And I'm just so used to it now. To be honest, I haven't gone out so much.
Sure.
Middle of a pandemic. But when you do, people do.
Of course.
Stare. Curious. They just want to know what happened.
Right.
What happened? I just wanted to have a little sticker. It's on. Blame the dog. It was a rabbit.
It was this one. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't take myself too seriously at all. I never have. And I just roll with it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's the way you have to deal with life, It's just what it is. All right, I'm going to change topics, and I'm going to ask you a question I ask everybody. COVID restrictions aside, no pandemic is happening. You can go wherever you want, and I come to you and I say, Brenda, I have a plane ticket to anywhere in the world. Where are you headed to?
I'm headed to the outback in Australia. And I've just always been fascinated with that kind of rugged life. It's part safari, it's part, I don't know, I love the cool accents. I love the put something on the Barbie and drink a beer. And I'm like, I think I would love it there. Yeah. And so I've traveled to a lot of places, but I've never been to Australia yet. And if I could have a second, if Australia I wasn't able to go there, I would definitely love to go to Egypt. My grandfather passed away in the war and he's buried in Cairo. And I think seeing those magnificent pyramids,
yes,
I think that would be pretty shock and awe.
Yeah.
And so whether I'm on a camel or if I'm just walking or seeing it from a distance, I just would be something amazing to see in person. I've seen the ones in the Mayan and Tulum. So I've seen some of the smaller ones, but to see those incredibly magnificent structures that people are still trying to figure out how they were made centuries ago without the equipment that we've got. I think that would be pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And in my world, I would, in my perfect scenario that I'm playing out here, I'd give you tickets to both and I'd join you on both of them. That'd be so good. What was the most, in your travels, what's the most surprising place you've been to?
That would be Paris. And I was very surprised at the cost, for one. I was young at the time, and thinking that we were going to stop at a little cafe just outside, I think it was the Eiffel Tower, it might have been the Louvre, stopping for a hamburger, salad, and 2 Cokes. I was better off getting the baguette and the carafe of wine because the Cokes were $6 American each, and this was in 1991.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine, but just being naive and not knowing. And I was also surprised at how dirty the city, because I had these romantic visions of what Paris is like. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, that's just in paintings, because the city itself, mind you, this was in 1991. I don't know what it's like in 2021, but the city itself, there was just litter everywhere, and it wasn't this pretty vision that I had in my head. So that surprised me.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, I'm same with you on that one. I do love Paris, but there is a grit to it, which made me like it more. I love when I get to a city and it's got some grit to it, and I think everyone's got that view of Paris, of just like this big whimsical, like I mean, Midnight in Paris, the movie, and you're walking the streets, and it is all of that, but there is grit to it, which I always like when I get to a city and it's a little grungy. I think
Yeah.
it's cool. But yeah, I was surprised too when I went to Paris for the first time with that.
Yeah.
All right, I have two final questions for you.
Okay.
And the first question is, what would you want the world to know about you?
Okay. So my company is Event Strategy Productions. And so we go by ESP. And my tagline is, we know what you're thinking. So as a young child, I've always let my intuition lead me. There's not a lot of people that can fake me out, and there's not a lot of people that can lie to me because I have this like spidey sense that just
Yeah.
I'll be like, yeah, no. And my radar is pretty good for BS. So I think a lot of people don't realize how much I lean on my intuition. And what was surprising to me is after my injury, it became so much more heightened.
Yeah.
So I like to say that I may have physically lost an eye, but my third eye is opened. And I really lean on my intuition a lot, and it's never let me down.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think it's woo woo. To me, it's not woo woo. Like
No.
I literally can feel vibes and energy,
Yeah.
whether being an empath, but I just really can get a sense of someone and can pick up on their energy, and I just let it guide me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love that. I love that that's your company name. It's so good. It's so good. Uh, all right. Last question for you is, if you had the ear of everybody in the world, what would you say to them?
I would say treat people as you would like to be treated, and treat people with respect. And that even though we all come from different backgrounds and different environments and different parts of the world, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we all want the same thing. We all want good quality of life. We want peace, and we want healthy and happy families. So I think respect goes a long way of breaking down those bridges of the religious battles or the political arguments and war. I know that people like to joke around that the female pageants all get asked what do they want, and they all say world peace. But I truly think it starts with respect and understanding. And if there's that mutual respect, that people can understand it's okay to be different.
Right.
But to celebrate our differences, because at the end of the day, we're more alike than we are different. But to celebrate differences, and that's probably one of the favorite things that I have when I travel is exploring, trying the food, listening to the music, just totally immersing myself in that culture.
Yeah.
And I think that when we can respect all cultures, that that would make a beautiful world, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, that's why I call it Beautifully Human Podcast, because I can talk to people from all over the world, from all walks of life, from gender identity to sexuality, to fill in your descriptor of what makes you quote unquote different. And majority of the time you will find out that it is very similar no matter where you grew up. But overarchingly, I don't think there's anyone out there that just wants to be hated. I think we all want to be loved and accepted and seen and be made to feel important, So yeah, I think yes, it is the answer that the pageant winners give of world peace, but I think it does. I know it does. It would be such a better world with a lot more respect and a lot more love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that whether we see it in our lifetime or not, I do hope that, more peace talks happen and more respect for cultures and religions and political views happen. One of my best friends and I don't see eye to eye politically, but we can have a conversation that is open and just honest,
Yeah.
open, valued, and respectful.
Yeah.
And that we have those conversations. And when she and I talked and she explained certain things to me, I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I still believe what I believe.
Yeah.
But I respect where you're coming from because now I've had an aha moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it is. That respect is such a key word to that. Is yes, we all have our differences. That is 100% true. We have different ways we react to things, as you found out with people reacting to the same, type of story that you have. Like, we all react differently because we're all different humans, right? But yeah, that level of respect to have those conversations in a respectful way. And then, like you said, you have an aha moment, but you still believe what you believe. But then at least you know where that person's coming from and what where they've found that belief from. And
I
yeah, it's
put it for 3 years. 3 years I kept it in. I never talked to her about it.
I think a lot of people do that.
Because she's my best friend. It's like,
Right.
what? Have this conversation with you because I don't understand where you're coming from.
Right.
And then it was the greatest conversation. She's like, please don't wait 3 years next time.
Right. Let's just hash this out. Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot of that going on here. And I tried to, so I'm on one side of politics. He was on the other side. I tried to have a talk with my friend and it just like didn't go anywhere. And it wasn't disrespectful. It was just like very like shallow details that he went into. And I was like, okay, you gained nothing from me on that. Like I hadn't voted yet in that election. And I was like, technically I'm saying like campaign for who you want to be in office. And I was like, okay, you did nothing to sway me, but that's your opinions. Okay. But yeah, I came at it with a respectful, like, please tell me. 'Cause I have no clue why you're thinking this way. I have no clue why you're voting for this man or why you think he's even a good person. So let's tell me why. 'Cause I think you're a really good person.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's a way to approach it is like, I understand who you are. I don't understand what you believe in and who you believe in. So talk to me about it and then shut up and listen.
Yeah. Respectful conversation. It goes such a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brenda, for the second time, this has been fantastic. Thank you for chatting with me twice now and sharing your story and just being such a wonderful, joyful human being. I truly enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's funny being an accidental pirate, but I can tell you that through my journey, I've met the most incredible people. And for that, I'm very grateful. So thank you for being one of those people. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I love that's a beautiful compliment. And I love accidental pirate. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, that is a badass patch. I love it.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Beautifully Human podcast. To hear more beautiful stories from beautiful humans, follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast. Peace signs up.